Welcome to Told in Stone. This video is sponsored by Wondrium. One warm summer evening, as sunset gilded the crosses and cupolas of central Rome, I spent an hour exploring the Vatican's Chiaramonti Museum. The museum consists of a single vaulted corridor lined by hundreds of Roman statues. Emperors stand with philosophers, merchants beside matrons, soldiers by freed slaves. Despite their variety, I noticed, virtually all of these statues had one thing in common. Their noses had been broken. Statues were indispensable ornaments of the classical city. They stood sentry over tombs, gazed down from the galleries of theaters, and garnished the gardens and villas of the rich. Each temple was centered on a magnificent likeness of its indwelling deity. Every sanctuary shone with portraits of worshippers and gods. Busts of the emperors presided in courtrooms, and petrified dignitaries crowded the boulevards, their pedestals proclaiming services to city and state, their ranks multiplying with the centuries. By late antiquity, the city of Rome boasted nearly 4,000 bronze statues, and as many marble statues, it was said, as living men. Although classical sculptors employed many materials, some temples, for example, sheltered images carved from wood or hewn from meteorites, while others gloried in gods of gold and ivory. Most freestanding statues were made of bronze or marble. The tensile strength of bronze made possible both the dynamic poses favored by the classical era's greatest sculptors and the vast scale of the Colossus of Rhodes, which was roughly the size of the Statue of Liberty. But in most periods and places, marble was the material of choice. There were many varieties: translucent Parian, purple-veined Phrygian, pallid Luna, which were quarried by the Roman imperial era on a proto-industrial scale that scattered marble statues from Britain to Syria. Before explaining why so few of those statues have survived intact to the present day, I'd like to talk briefly about this video's sponsor. Wondrium, formerly known as the Great Courses Plus, is a subscription video service. In addition to the Great Courses, a series of lectures by professors and professionals on hundreds of topics, Wondrium gives you access to a huge range of well-researched and engaging educational content, from tutorials to documentaries. I've been a fan of the Great Courses for years, and Wondrium has made it easier than ever before to find new topics. Recently, for example, I was thrilled to discover an entire course on Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. As an avid hiker, I'm also enjoying one of Wondrium's newest offerings, a series on America's great trails. To start your own journey, visit wondrium.com/toldinstone or click on the link in the description to sign up for a free trial and start learning today. Back to statues. During late antiquity, the glittering ranks of statues that adorned cities and sanctuaries across the classical world began to be decimated. Bronze, used in everything from coins to cannonballs, was scavenged early and often, to the point that virtually every bronze statue above ground during the Middle Ages was melted down. The survival rate for marble statues, fortunately, was higher, and, although thousands were burned to produce lime, sheer quantity ensured that thousands more would survive to the Renaissance. Most of these marble survivors, to return to our initial topic, are missing their original noses. In some cases, this reflects deliberate mutilation. During the 4th and 5th centuries, Christians destroyed statues that represented the old gods. At Alexandria, a mob dismembered and burned a great statue of the god Serapis. A bishop led a detachment of soldiers through the temples and palaces of Gaza, smashing every idol he found. An inscription discovered at Ephesus records how a statue of Artemis was broken and replaced with a cross, and the pediments of the Parthenon still bear the scars of statues torn down when the building was converted into a church. Although such destruction was far from universal, in most cases, only the most prominent images of the old gods were targeted. Ancient statues that survived into the Middle Ages tended to be seen as dangerous curiosities, prone to demonic possession and enchantment by magicians. In an effort to neutralize their malignant power, crosses were sometimes cut into their foreheads and bodies. And in Roman Egypt, their noses were broken. Since the Pharaonic period, the Egyptians had regarded statues as receptacles for the essence of the gods and the spirits of the dead, and as instruments through which gods and spirits could communicate with the living. Such communion, however, was predicated on the physical integrity of the statue. If its ears were broken, it could not hear. And if its nose were destroyed, the spirit within, unable to breathe, would die. Knowing this, Egyptian Christians sometimes killed ancient statues by smashing their noses. Outside Egypt, however, there is no evidence that noses were deliberately targeted. In most cases, a statue's nose seems to have simply broken when it fell, as statues almost always did, sooner or later. Most of the Mediterranean is prone to strong earthquakes, and these shocks have sent statues, including the Colossus of Rhodes, snapped at the knees by a tremor, tumbling since antiquity. Whether felled by earthquake, vandalism, or simple age, marble statues tended to shatter along a few points of vulnerability. The most obvious of these was the neck, but the limbs, especially if outstretched, were almost equally fragile. And if a statue fell forward or was struck in the face by rubble, its nose would break. This rule is disguised by the fact that, from the Renaissance till the 19th century, it was standard practice to restore the broken noses and limbs of ancient statues. Cellini, Bernini, and many other artists earned a substantial part of their income from restoration work, which sometimes extended to the point of creating entirely new works from ancient fragments. As I walked through the Chiaramonti Museum on that warm summer afternoon, I could see, on statue after statue, the hairline cracks betraying a replacement nose. But after a while, I stopped noticing. I was too entranced by that long gallery and its 1,000 portraits, which looked, I imagined, much as the heart of Rome must have looked before the statues fell. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting Told in Stone on Patreon. You might also enjoy my book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants. Thanks for watching.